More than 12,000 ships from all over the world dock at the Port of Hamburg each year. 160,000 jobs depend directly upon the port. It's one of the most important German business locations. More than 100 million tons of goods and around 9 million containers. Hamburg is one of the world's top 20 seaports. The towboat Barge, under the command of Captain Timo Müller, is taking a huge container ship to the pier, a dangerous job. The container terminals are manned 24 hours a day. Bridge operator Björn Siemsen is under constant pressure to meet deadlines. And dock worker Henry Hirkendorf faces a real challenge as he loads an enormously heavy ship's propeller with his boys. The Port of Hamburg would not function at all without them. The Barge is a modern towboat with more than 5,600 horsepower. Today, Captain Timo Müller is due to receive a huge container ship and escort it safely from Hamburg's state border to the pier.
You can already see the Kyoto Express arriving. She's easy to spot in the mist.
The container ship is 335 meters long. Tension rises among the crew members and the tug captain. They've been doing this job for many years, but the respect remains.
Now, once we've attached ourselves to the front of the Kyoto Express in a minute, it's true that I run the risk of making a mistake and getting run over by the ship. I mean, we could be rammed by the ship and then would probably end up being pulled underwater, or the motor may also cut out, making it impossible for us to maneuver in front of the ship. You don't want these things to happen, but of course there is a possibility they might. So, pulling the ship from the front is dangerous and challenging in any event.
The harbor pilot boards the ship before it can cross Hamburg's federal state border. He's going to instruct the other towboats. The shipping company has ordered 3 powerful towboats for the job.
Here's the second towboat that's coming with us. Perfect, it's going astern. Morning, the brake is listening on 6 for the Kyoto Express.
Okay. Perfect, grab it and turn it fore and aft and in the south port.
Yeah, we'll go alongside. Brake in front and later turning south. All good.
The Kyoto Express is quite a beast that comes dangerously close to the small towboat. But this is the only way the deckhand can take the head rope and attach the towing hook to it, which is then pulled upwards. There's one firm rule. The rope always comes from the harbor tug so that the crew can be sure it's strong enough and completely intact. Their lives depend on it. If the rope were to sever, it would be disastrous.
Ship is moving at a good speed. We're going at 8.5 knots here. This is neither too slow nor too fast for us. It has to have a certain speed to be able to steer. The more slowly it moves, the less the rudder blade is exposed to the current, and the more difficult it becomes to steer. So it really needs good speed to navigate safely.
Shortly, the ship will have to be turned 360 degrees. The Golden Karoo has moored at the southwest terminal. Packaged goods are to be loaded onto the Chinese cargo ship, a job for the last remaining stevedores. The dock workers. Torsten Klatt is their loadmaster.
Either 3 or 4. We'll keep moving here, a little further that way towards the pier.
The steel trough is going to a factory in China.
We call this the bathtub. It weighs 43 metric tons, 43.6.
The weight isn't a problem, but the bathtub's dimensions are giving second stevedore Gordon Wallace a headache.
The challenge for the deckman or crane operator is that the hatch cover itself, the hatch opening here, is only 14.4 meters, and the bathtub is 15.1 meters. The challenge is, of course, we have to go crossways. We come in diagonally, and then we have to turn when there's an opening down there so that it stands straight. On the water side, we still have room, please. "43 metric tons. There's always a little momentum with it. You realize you still see some movement. To hold that really still, that rarely happens. But as you can see, we've managed it perfectly.
haben wir das perfekt hingekriegt.
The first challenge is over. In the past, dock workers shaped the image of Hamburg's gateway to the world. Today, only a few people do this backbreaking job. Tony is one of them.
Yes, it's the whole 9 yards right now because the crane driver can't see anything. I'm sort of the middleman between the people in the hatch and the crane driver. Everything's fine as long as he can see, but when he can't see, that's when I have to jump in, of course.
The job can be dangerous. Extremely heavy loads are suspended in the cargo hold over the men's heads.
Keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going. Swing a little to the left. Yes, good. Yeah. That's practically still the old port work. This is still general cargo. Container is always pretty monotonous, always the same procedure. And here you have to think a bit. How does the cargo get in? How do we lash it? A container is always standardized. It's always about putting it in and done. But with something like this, you always have to check whether it fits, the dimensions. How is it attached or secured, the load? Of course, that's a bit more exciting than working with containers.
Working at the port is about learning by watching. The young men are learning from the old hands, just like in the past. The heavy boxes need to be stacked in such a way that they are not damaged.
If we were to stow the boxes on top of each other, it might weigh too much. We remove the boxes, place a board under them, and stabilize them so they won't collapse.
The stevedores use so-called lashing chains to secure the heavy boxes.
One chain comes from above and the other from down here. Then you take the tensioner, which acts as the lock to connect the two chains and lash them together.
The lashing crew relies on muscle strength and the leverage of its tools. These safety locks do not open very quickly. The crates are fixed in place for rough seas and long journeys. Experience and tricks are fairly important for handling heavy loads.
Nicely done.
The Kühlbrand Bridge is a challenge. The clearance height is only about 52 meters. That's just enough for the Kyoto Express. The new huge ships can no longer dock at the container terminal behind it. The 335-meter-long ship hangs onto the hook of Captain Timo Müller's towboat. He now has to turn the giant 360 degrees.
Now I have to be careful, of course, as the ship moves a little bit ahead. If I'm not careful now, it is possible that we will turn around, which means we would essentially be facing in the wrong direction on the side of the ship. I have to ensure that the line is at a 90-degree angle so we can clear when he says attach to steering board and can start right away.
The harbor pilot instructs the towboats using the radio.
Plenty of room at the front for NYK.
Okay.
The giant ship lies parallel with the quay wall. Timo Müller gives the order to haul in the tow line. Now, the giant container freighter is unable to maneuver. The towboats must get into position as quickly as possible to tow the ship to the quay wall. There are marked points on the ship's side for this purpose. It's here that the towboat can exert pressure.
Break halfway.
Halfway.
A towboat captain must have experience and knowledge. He must keep an eye on the tide, high and low. He must know the currents and estimate the wind. It's the only way to safely berth ocean-going vessels at the pier.
We're pushing this way now, and the perfect essentially keeps her off the quay a bit. As soon as we're completely parallel and on the fenders, we push at full speed so that she doesn't get off the quay. Then the lines get tied to the quay.
The Brake nails the huge container freighter to the pier. Then the pilot gives the signal. The ship has moored. The towboats can veer off. The job is done. Hamburg is Germany's largest container port. In Europe, it's only Rotterdam that handles more steel boxes. The bridge drivers work at a height of about 50 meters. Björn Siemsen operates two joysticks. With these, he can move the crane carriage back and forth and use the spreader to lift the containers upwards.
Of course, you have to be able to control the spreader, and to do this, you have to be able to master driving out what we call the swing first. Most bridge operators need up to 2 years before they can do this perfectly. There are operators who learn faster and those who need longer.
A guide on the ship constantly informs Siemsen about which containers are to be moved. In Hamburg, only part of the cargo is unloaded.
It's often the case that we drive for 4 hours on the bridge, so the concentration required is of course very high. The smallest mistake could cause damage. In the worst case, even lead to personal injury, and that's why you have to be very careful when working here.
98% of goods now arrive and leave the port by container. The world of standardized steel boxes is largely automated and computer controlled. The technical highlight in Hamburg, these driverless vehicles. They're guided to their destination by sensors in the ground. Humans are no longer needed in the block storage area. Around 25,000 containers reach the Port of Hamburg every day. Just as many leave the port again by truck or train. And there's no end in sight to the container boom.
Block storage is completely controlled by computers. We have a big piece of software for it. It calculates everything. Every position of the containers is pre-programmed. The containers are then removed or put into storage. When they're moved out to the water side of the ships, they're pre-programmed and put onto the AGVs. The AGV are programmed to go directly to the container bridge.
The Kyoto Express is now taking new containers on board. The central computer controls the delivery of the steel crates, so that the containers that are to be unloaded in the next port are the last ones to be stored on board. But suddenly the loading stops. There's an unexpected problem on Björn Siemsen's steering bridge.
Bernd, I think you need to sink something.
Yeah, looks like it slipped through. I'll fix it.
We have a technical problem in that we have a bridge with 2 crane carriages. We hand over the container with the main carriage. Then the portal carriage picks up the container and takes it to the back of the AGV area. This is the main carriage and this is the portal carriage, which just slipped through. So because the system doesn't know exactly where it is right now, which could lead to a collision within this area, I got locked out. The bridge supervisor has now synchronized the carriage again and put it in position. The sensors recognize everything again, and now we can carry on working normally. We're in constant contact with supervisors, with the control center, with lashing foremen, so that the whole workflow gets perfected, resulting in a super clean process.
The bridge operator's job is very complex, and there isn't a computer yet that could replace him.
The best part of this job, well, definitely looking to the east here in the morning after a night shift, and then weather permitting, we get to see a really great sunrise. We have the River Elbe right in front of us and see the ships passing each other. It's really a great place to work.
Heavy cargo is still being loaded at the Southwest Terminal. Loading supervisor Thorsten Klatt has been around long enough to immediately spot when his boys are making mistakes.
Nope. This way, there. Yeah, that's loose. Everything can slip away down there. Go and fetch it, please. No, stop what you're doing.
Ja, Peter, deshalb habe ich doch gerade gesagt.
Yeah, Peter, that's why I just said, get it and go. So normally, with many pieces of cargo, there are certain lashing points. There are none here. I have to find some, where I can latch on and fasten things, for example, at the front of the chassis. Nothing can happen there now, but if I don't have any, it's going to be a bit difficult, isn't it?
On board, second stevedore Gordon Wallace is not satisfied either. His men cannot find enough points to secure the cargo safely in the ship's hold.
Transept, aft edge on the wall. Marcus. 1, 2, 3, 4, do that. You can put the tractor there. Then you have to move the crate again.
So
with the tractor, you have to see where the lashing points are so that you can lash it properly. With the shafts, normally we put them lengthwise, which is more stable. Then you pull them towards the wall, but there are no lashing points. I can't lash them. I put them free ship, because here on the aft edge, I actually have lashing points that can be used to secure things properly.
In the hold, Miguel leads the command. Born in Portugal, he's an experienced stevedore. He shows the younger employees how to properly lash the heavy cargo.
He's making a backstop for this shaft right now. That's 35 metric tons. We're making 40 lugs. That's quite normal. One chain is suitable for 10 metric tons. 10 lugs mean 20 metric tons, when the chain is new.
Sometimes the chains break, resulting in bad accidents. The tractors have to be reparked. Now they're in the right place. Here, Miguel can lash the vehicles firmly. An individual solution must be found for each piece of general cargo. That makes the job demanding and exhausting. After 8 hours of hard work, the end of the shift is finally in sight.
This is what we call punishment for the lashers. More tonnage means more work and more lashing. That's punishing work. But people do it with humor. It's all right, isn't it?
The work of the stevedores does not fit into a standardized steel box. But modern technology has made the men almost superfluous. Their numbers are decreasing every year. High tech inexorably replaces manpower. The Port of Hamburg is a good 100 kilometers from the North Sea. However, it's still considered a seaport because large container ships take advantage of the flood tides and can pass through the shipping channel with a draft of up to 15 meters. For the tugs, this means that their operations depend on the water level. During low tide, the Brake's crew can moor in the port, but the crew must always stay close to their ship in case they're needed. Timo Müller and his men stay on board for 7 days at a time. Then they have 7 days off. Each crew member has his own cabin and shower.
On Thursdays, we start at 11, really in the tightest space. In winter, you can't get out because it's so cold, and we're here for a week. Our families and children are waiting for us at home, so you hope you can get home quickly, and most of all, safe and sound.
In the belly of the ship sit the 2 diesel engines that Mario Schmalfeld checks every day. With almost 5,600 horsepower, they drive 2 propellers which are mounted under the hull and can be turned 360 degrees. This makes the towboat extremely maneuverable.
This is a Caterpillar engine, 16 cylinders arranged in a V-shape around 2,100 kilowatts, which equals just about 2,850 horsepower. That goes to the back, to the propeller. It's relatively powerful for such a small tugboat. As ships get bigger, you need more powerful tugs. This is partly wanted or stipulated by the port.
In an emergency, the towboat must be ready for operation within 5 minutes. So, Timo Müller usually leaves his ship only to talk to the dispatcher about upcoming assignments. Delays are common, as ships often have to wait at the mouth of the river. Many assignments are decided on short notice. In bad weather, shipping companies like to order additional towboats.
You can plan for most things, but there are always unforeseeable things like terminals not being ready in time, or the weather not playing along, or a storm which means the big ships are not allowed to sail on the Elbe. If the water is too low, that's a problem too, because some of the ships have a draft of 12, 13, 14 meters, And this influences which site they go to. Or if the water is too high, they can't pass under the Kölbrand Bridge, for example.
At dusk, the next mission starts. Another container freighter wants to enter the port.
Yeah, another container ship. Without containers. Almost 280 meters long. And so empty that even the ship's propeller sticks out at the bottom.
This time, the Brake takes over the position at the rear. In an emergency, the tug has to slow down the giant. No problem for the little powerhouse. Its pulling power is enormous. The Brake can pull 40 tons of bollard pull. Deckhand Krüger has the most dangerous job.
You make sure that when they throw out everything from above and we're almost directly underneath, that we don't get the lines on our heads or hurt ourselves. So keep your eyes on deck and watch out that nothing happens. Always work accident-free if possible.
An assignment like this takes a good 3 hours.
Now we've stopped the ship and are starting to turn. And now let's get into position here and put the pedal to the metal again.
Timo Müller turns the freighter until it sits parallel with the quay wall. The 35-year-old has never felt the desire to operate a larger ship. He's been a tug captain for 11 years. His world is the harbor. Vito Lars Krüger, on the other hand, used to go to sea. But he signed on as a deckhand for the sake of his family.
Well, when I think back, I started on a fishing trawler that was built in 45, 46, and since then things have really changed. They're getting bigger and bigger, and the equipment ever better. Safety is very important now, which was not the case in the past. A lot has changed already.
The operation finishes around midnight. The tugboat crew can rest. They do not have to go out again tonight. But now Henry Hückendorf and Vladimir Safonov have to start their shifts.
We can get going, right?
Yeah.
The 52-year-old is one of the few originals left called a Ewer guide.
We're actually always on duty. Doesn't matter if it's snowing, if it's raining, or if it's thunder and lightning, we always set sail.
Ewer guides were the names traditionally given to the port workers who transported goods across the canals with their ships.
Then you tighten it like this. It's got to be tight, because otherwise the assembly will move. Now it's like it's been welded together.
Harry and his colleagues have moored a so-called barge to their ship. They use it to transport containers, general cargo, or loose cargo between terminals. Today, port bargeman Vladimir Safonov faces a real challenge. He has to pick up a ship's propeller weighing roughly 70 tons. A floating crane has been specially ordered for heavy transport. Although it was built back in 1946, it's still indispensable. Even in the container era, there is still enough general cargo to be loaded.
The barge pushers are important for the port in general because not everything can be moved on roads and you can't get everywhere. You have obstacles like bridges, so you can't ship high flat rack container. We then transport them with the barges. In fact, we can take more with us than a truck. We can load up to 60 containers in a barge, and for that you need 60 trucks.
Here are the rubbers. Another one?
Yeah.
You can have one more.
That has to do, mate. That's enough now.
You can go back and forth. Watch out it doesn't slip, okay?
Yeah.
We're going to put rubber mats there now so that it can't slip away. If the barge gets lopsided, if it's too much, it can get slanted. And eventually, depending on how heavy the load is, it can also tip over.
The propeller has a diameter of 10 meters, and the barge is just a few centimeters wider. The crane operator has to handle it with finesse. Even a small dent could make the propeller worthless. From now on, Henry and Vladimir are responsible for the precious cargo.
There was still 5 centimeters space on each side.
Yep.
So this is a pretty tight job. And with 103 metric tons, if he hits it, the thing is bent immediately. And I'd rather not know how much a propeller like that costs.
Nope, definitely not.
The propeller costs a good 700,000 euros and is due to set off on the long journey to China in less than 3 hours on a freighter. The barge pushers have to step on it. The coal freighter from Norway docks at the bulk goods terminal this morning. Shift supervisor Rudi Enderling is one of the few workers still needed here.
Now I'm waiting until she's within earshot. I stand where it needs to go with the bridge because I'm the one who says where the ship has to go so that we can unload it optimally with our equipment. And then let's hope that the guys up there understand their job and dock the ship the way I want it to.
The freighter has about 13,000 tons of coal on board.
4 sides of bridge here, please.
The Hamburg terminal is one of the largest in Europe. Power plants and steelworks are supplied from here.
Great. Yeah, just like I imagined.
To give Hamburg a chance to compete against other seaports, the company relies on the automation of the plant. You hardly see people here anymore. The bulk goods terminal is the most modern facility in the Port of Hamburg. The computer colleague takes more and more control. For plant manager Hartmut Boos, this is a model for the future.
We can start when the hatch is open. In automatic mode, everything is occupied.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the go-ahead from the stevedore, and then...
Yeah, he has to clear how we proceed with the captain first, and once he's given us the go-ahead, we'll make a start. The bridges are the first worldwide to be automated.
Die Brücken sind die ersten auf dieser Welt, die automatisiert wurden hier bei uns.
The green lights indicate that no one is sitting there anymore. This tells everyone working here in the plant that they're not manned by an operator and that they run fully automated. They're monitored from the central control room, and someone there can act in the case of a malfunction. But otherwise, no person is needed anymore.
The bridges for unloading only need to be brought into their correct position. Then, millions of tons of coal and ore can be moved as if by magic, without any bridge driver, non-stop, around the clock. More than 10% of the total port turnover is handled in this section of the port, and that with just over 110 employees.
We're capable of moving over 15 million metric tons across the quay walls. 1/3 of this, about 6 million tons, is coal, while 9 million tons are ore. We supply 2 steelworks with ore, and similarly several power plants receive coal from us. Everything that we heave across the quay walls must of course be delivered back again. So we move almost 30 million metric tons a year.
The Port of Hamburg has always served as a huge storage and transshipment hub for goods. However, where there are goods, there are pests. And Lutz Fechner and Jan Duvel are here to hunt them down.
This here is what is known as the fruit mile, where in the old days really large ships arrived, loaded with loose cartons that got unloaded here and then put into storage. Nowadays, everything only just arrives in containers and the customer orders everything just in time and gets it delivered to his warehouse.
The inspectors have an appointment with a logistics company. It has received fresh goods from China, which are to be imported into the EU. It's a shipment of pomelos, a citrus fruit. The inspectors are supposed to ensure that the sensitive fruit is not infested with a fungus. This could be a dangerous threat to citrus-growing areas in Europe.
Yeah, very nice. That's good.
Pomelos from China. Let's check them.
Yeah.
Good, and here comes our pallet stack.
So now we're looking for insects and pests on the fruit that are not indigenous to the EU that could cause damage, economic damage.
The inspectors take random samples. Some fruit goes to the laboratory for further analysis. In the past, Lutz Fechner has even been sent to produce-growing countries to check goods before they were shipped to Germany.
Of course, we know the countries where diseases occur, what diseases can be found in the fruit, and what symptoms we're looking for. There are bacteriological diseases, viruses, fungi, and you'd be able to spot some of them just by looking at the skin.
Fungi and pests make the fruit unsightly. An infestation like that could be spotted immediately. The inspectors could then prohibit the import.
These are pips. This is nothing.
Yeah, you're right.
Of course, the customer has a number of options to choose from. He can either send the goods back to the company that sent them to him, or he can have the goods destroyed here, or he can sell them to any country that has different regulations, where this disease is not warranting any quarantine. This possibility also exists, in which case the container needs to be re-exported.
These storerooms are filled with pure indulgence. 3.5 tons of premium cocoa worth 15 million euros. The master of this sweet treasure is Ralf Gassner.
Cocoa consists of around 50% fat, the so-called cocoa butter. The differences lie in the aroma. Premium cocos have a very strong aroma, very chocolatey, whereas the normal consumer cocos from West Africa are actually used for mass chocolate, that is, for whole milk varieties. At first, of course, we look at the initial impression, see if there are any foreign smells, after which we make a cutting test. This means that beans are sliced to determine on a percentage basis whether there is pest infestation inside and whether beans are moldy from the inside or whether they have not fermented properly.
The sweet temptation brings dangerous pests into the country. Another job for Lutz Fechner and Jan Duvel. Using a flashlight, they take a close look at the valuable cargo. They search for so-called quarantine pests.
Let's take some samples. You can just poke them like this. These are burlap sacks. When I'm finished, I can close them again to some extent so that nothing comes out. When I started 25 years ago with the Plant Health Inspection Service, I saw what kind of caterpillars, people in the sheds usually refer to them as maggots because they're so small, but they're from moths, the larvae from moths. And there were so many and it looked so disgusting that I started to stop eating chocolate right away. But that didn't last long, as you can see.
Pests do not only contaminate the cargo, in the worst case, they can even destroy the cocoa.
Yeah, so here we found a live larva from a moth.
We'll have to do a little bit of resuscitation now.
Yeah, it's moving.
It's moving slowly now. Well, the fumigation is always a bit tricky, especially in winter when the heating is not done properly. Or the eggs, those are always a bit hard to get.
This has, of course, improved dramatically over the last years, the last decades. The hygiene, also in the countries of origin. Therefore, we find way fewer as 30 or 35 years ago.
The larvae and the samples are sent to the laboratory for further examination, after which the inspectors will decide whether or not the cocoa must be treated. On one of the side branches of the Elbe, the port skippers are on their way to the shipping terminal with their massive load. The freighter that is supposed to take the propeller to China is already waiting. But first, the men have to pass a bottleneck. Although it's a lift bridge, it will not be raised, especially for the small barge. Rather, the captain will have to keep his head down. 4.70 meters is the maximum clearance height. No problem for barge captains Henry Hückendorf and Vladimir Safonov. The times of the old longshoremen are almost gone. Henry is one of the last of his guild. He still learned the job as a ewer guide from scratch.
There are no more ewer guides. There's no more training. There are now only harbor skippers. They no longer learn properly. They're shown things, but not in the same way as it used to be. Used to be a lot of work done by hand and all that stuff. And today it's hardly like that anymore because everything is in containers.
Only 2% of the goods are not transported by container. Like this propeller. The captain of the Rigma Sol lowers the holding ropes by board crane and pushes for speed.
Boss, just pull the loops under, right?
Yeah, of course. Simply pull it under. 3 men, 3 corners, and it's not.
All right, boss.
The ship has been given a fixed time window for its departure.
Let's go. As you can see, we fasten the propeller with these straps. We have to make sure that the straps all fit perfectly, that they won't touch any sharp edges. And we'll need to pay attention when he lifts it to keep distance and watch what happens. Tighten it.
Everything now depends on the crane operator. The massive propeller, weighing several tons, must not touch the side of the ship. Vladimir has fulfilled his mission. The propeller is safely on board. Now he can go and clean up with Henry.
Hold on, old man, I'm coming.
Pass down another rope.
For Henry, the operation was too hectic.
So we didn't expect that it would go that fast. Normally it takes a long time. They prepare everything first, and then at the end the thingamajig comes along. It all worked out beautifully today.
For the next job, the barge is no longer needed. The men moor it at the quay. General cargo will be loaded here tomorrow. This assignment lasted over 4 hours. Now the pushboat is turning and going back to the container terminal. The Rigma Sol is also setting off for China. Henry and Vladimir have time for a breakfast break. While the ewer guide is an old-timer, 28-year-old Vladimir is still a youngster. He has only been working at the port for 4 years.
Well, in the port there's a bit more banter than elsewhere. Occasionally you're called an idiot, but here nobody takes it seriously, really. In one ear, out the other. Finished. That's just port gibberish. Hey, fatso, that's now standard. Henry, here's your coffee.
Thank you.
Sugar's there, okay?
Yeah.
Hang on, here's a spoon.
So, it's like, used to be that if you worked with a colleague and he didn't feel well, then you'd pick up the slack for him. And today, that's no longer possible because everything has become so much faster. Everything is much more rushed.
The romantic port life of yesteryears hardly exists anymore. More and more the computer, as colleague, determines the work rhythm. At Hansa Port, coal and ores are now loaded fully automated, from ocean-going vessel via storage to freight trains. Plant manager Hartmut Buß is proud of his facility.
These are also known as combination devices because they work in combination. Currently they're in reloading mode. You can tell from the rotating bucket wheels. Pellets are transported to the belt. Once we bring the material from the ship to the warehouse, the bucket wheel stops and the belt system takes the material to the warehouse.
In the control center of the high-tech facility, 2 employees are sufficient to monitor the loading terminals and combination units. They only intervene when something goes wrong. Otherwise, the computer uses a 3D scanner to calculate the correct position of the gripper arm in the hatch, accurate to the centimeter.
How many hatches we actually wanted to get something out of. And on the scale after Staffelweg,
3 and 7.
3 and 7, then 3 stays, and you throw 2 back out on hatch 7. We have 4,000 metric tons, 13 it needs to do. If I look at it now, it's 10:30 a.m. Then it should be done by 2 p.m.
Sure, let's see.
Because with the high tide, it'll be moving over to Moorburg.
Time is money at the Port of Hamburg. The computer manages to unload the coal freighter in less than 5 hours.
We now have a workstation for automatic bridge operation. This is completely new. The levers are placed the way they are in the operator's cab. But these are only meant for emergencies. In case of a malfunction, you can intervene manually. Let's say a gripper that has perhaps twisted. You can raise it up again here and then press a button, and then the automatic operation continues.
One gripper can unload up to 1,500 tons per hour. The Norwegian coal freighter is currently using 2 unloading bridges. They have to be repositioned again and again, depending on which loading hatch is currently handled. A job for Rudi Enderling.
Sven, I'll be on site so we can switch hatches. Hatch 7.
The shift supervisor maintains contact with the control station and gives instructions.
Sven, I'm here. We can continue.
Go soon.
Stop. Place the stake here, please.
Setting the stake here.
So now we position the stake. This is the range, how far it is allowed to drive up. Then there's still the safety area away from the ship's movement in case a bigger ship passes somewhere. The ship can move, and if you're too close to it just in this moment, then there could be a collision. So far, knock on wood, that has not happened.
The coal is transported to the stockpiles via 10-kilometer-long conveyor belts.
Now I'm driving down the stretch where the material runs along the road belts. And I'm going to make a visual and acoustic check to see if everything is in order. And see if there's any material falling off somewhere near the other bridges that are not in use because we have too much weight on the belt or something like that. You can hear that. But from the sound I can tell that it is a rubber abrasion from the rollers which doesn't harm the belt. That will have to be fixed soon, but it's not urgent. Not yet.
Millions of tons of coal and ores are stored in the port area. When a new cargo arrives, the buyers send their inspectors. They will inspect the goods. Rudi Enderling visits the quality inspector.
Everything okay?
Yeah, all good.
Right.
Ivan Loisgelder works for a Dutch company. He travels all over Europe. When a shipload arrives, he travels there and checks the quality. He takes random samples that are later examined in the laboratory. Workers from Hamburg used to do this job, but the Dutchman is cheaper. Globalization has long since become part of everyday life in the port as well. Coal stockpiles run the risk of catching fire. Therefore, the inspector regularly checks the temperature.
We check the coal. We just check if there's no iron in it because of magnets or plastic or wood. It's just a visual inspection what we do.
Hansaport is the port's future. Man is replaced by the computer. The port area covers more than 7 hectares. Countless companies have settled here. The inspectors for plant health control are at a granite dealer in the afternoon.
We have to go to the front. The new one there with the red tape.
The one with the red strapping, right. First, we look at the stamps, which are important in terms of the country code and that they're treated. This could be an MB, which stands for methyl bromide, a fumigation. These are now heat treated. We're talking about the Asian hardwood beetle, which looks like this and is also difficult to control. If it's found, we had that in Bavaria, in Feldkirchen, where the whole forest was cleared, the grove, and shredded to under 1 centimeter so that the big critters are gone. Then everything's burned and the trees along the access roads cut down. That could lead to tremendous economic damage.
Lutz Fechner knows the hiding places of the Asian longhorn beetle.
So this could be a borehole. But since you can't get any further here and there are no chips that would come loose and get stuck in the borehole, this is simply another type of damage and not a borehole.
The inspectors return to the laboratory. Here they continue their detective work.
So here we have our samples that we just took now in the cocoa warehouse. They are now being sifted to see if there's anything more to be found in the sample.
With cocoa in particular, the inspectors only see whether there are any pests between the beans after sieving. It's estimated that 20% of annual cocoa cultivation falls victim to harmful fungi, insects, and viruses. This is particularly true for premium cocoa varieties that are especially vulnerable.
The insects are averse to light and have an escape reflex. They try to escape immediately, like here, for example, we have a beetle that is trying to escape right now. The bugs are also very small, and their color and shape are almost unnoticeable. You really need a trained eye to find these things.
The cargo of cocoa appears to be infested with pests. The inspectors have to decide whether they agree to the resale to other EU countries.
If we have a longhorn beetle larva in there, for example, it's the same as if I have a big tree that is hollowed out from the inside. It dies off at some point. So what do we do now?
Well, we call first and say we have infestation, and there's no phytosanitary certificate. Let's see what they come back with.
Yeah, it's either a case of substitution
or fumigation.
Or fumigation, yeah.
The situation looks better for the citrus fruits.
So unlike the cocoa, where we have an infestation, which is an export, this is an import, and they now get a release from us for customers, that the goods can be imported into the EU.
Meanwhile, shipping traffic is jammed at the container terminal. A large container freighter wants to dock. Its sister ship is getting ready to leave.
We got one of them, the little one goes away.
All canned goods there.
The Kyoto Express leaves the port after more than 36 hours.
That looks good, I'd say, but I would never go on a ship like that. Because first of all, they don't have any more berthing times. It used to be that they were on the quay for 3 weeks, and today they moor there for 2 days and then they set sail again. You only see water. Nah, that's not for me.
The ocean liner, of course, has right of way. The barge captains must let him pass, and only then can they moor their barge. She has loaded crates that are to be unloaded immediately. To do this, the barge has to be moved to the right berth. Henry Hückendorf can't relate to the world of containers, but he has respect for the art of bridge operators.
It's got to lie perfectly on the fender here. I'd say it's about 60 meters, where he's sitting up there. And then he's got to hit a small hole like this down here, with a spreader. That's no easy feat, I'd say. There's a lot of know-how in that.
The barge gets unloaded within a few minutes, but it will remain at the pier until the next day, when it will receive new cargo. For the young harbor skipper and the experienced ewer guide, it's end of shift for the day. The old tugboat, built in 1909, takes them back to the piers.
I don't like being at home either. I'd love to work on the water all the time. And as I said, that's the way it is. It's in the blood. Either you do it, or you leave it alone.
Men like Henry are the exception, but they still exist. If you want to, you can still find the old harbor within the modern digital harbor, the one of general cargo, handshakes, and the longing for faraway places.